Imagine this for a second. You've got $5,000 sitting in your bank account right now. Maybe you scraped it together over the last year or two, or perhaps you got lucky and had a windfall. Either way, there it is. $5,000. And you're looking at this number thinking, how on earth am I ever supposed to turn this into 100,000? That feels impossible. Like you'd need to earn crazy returns or have some secret investment strategy that only the wealthy know about. But here's what I'm about to show you. And I promise this is going to change how you think about money and time and the power of compound growth. That $5,000 isn't just $5,000. It's actually the foundation for building 100,000 or more, and the timeline is way shorter than you probably think. And I help people understand that financial growth isn't about becoming some stock-picking genius or getting lucky with cryptocurrency. It's about understanding how mathematics and time work together to create exponential wealth. If you're someone who actually wants to see your money grow and you're tired of feeling like you're stuck, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up because what I'm about to break down for you is going to blow your mind. Let me start by addressing the elephant in the room. Most people hear $5,000 and think that's some kind of joke amount when we're talking about reaching 100 grand. But the people who understand compound interest know something that most people don't. That $5,000, if you're strategic about what you do with it, isn't just a starting point. It's the catalyst for something much bigger. Here's what I want you to understand right from the beginning. The jump from 5,000 to 100,000 sounds like you're going from nothing to something really significant. But mathematically, you're actually closer than you think. And the secret to closing that gap faster than you expect comes down to one simple principle that the wealthy understand, but most people completely overlook. Let me paint you a picture of what actually happens when you take that $5,000 and you decide to invest it properly. First, you need to understand that the hard part is already done. Getting to 5,000 is the brutal part. That's the part that required sacrifice, discipline, and probably saying no to a lot of things you wanted. You had to resist the urge to blow your money on random stuff. You had to skip dinners out with friends. You probably declined vacations because you wanted to build this foundation. That mental and emotional work is the hardest currency in the entire wealth building process. Most people never even get here. So the fact that you have $5,000 means you've already proven something important about yourself. You can delay gratification. You can stick to a plan. You have the discipline to build something meaningful. Now here's where it gets interesting. That $5,000, when invested properly in something like a basic index fund, earning an average return of 8% annually, which is actually quite conservative, starts working for you immediately. Let's say you also commit to adding just $100 per month to this investment. That's not an impossible amount. That's what some people spend on their daily coffee habit. It's about $4 a day. But watch what happens when you combine that initial $5,000 with consistent monthly contributions and compound growth over time. In the first year, your $5,000 grows to about $5,500. You've added $1,200 from your monthly contributions. Your investment returns have generated around $400. Nothing earth-shattering yet, right? But here's what's crucial to understand. You haven't even really seen compound interest do its thing yet. That comes later. The first year is where you're building the habit. You're proving to yourself that you can do this consistently. You're getting used to the idea of your money working for you. That psychological component is almost as important as the financial component at this stage. By year 2, your balance is pushing closer to $8,000. Notice that you're adding the same amount, $100 a month, which is $1,200. But your returns are higher now because you have more money invested. By year 3, you're looking at nearly $11,000. You can see the growth accelerating, right? Each year, that money is earning returns on returns. It's starting to snowball, but we're still in the early stage where most of your wealth is coming from your own contributions. You're doing the heavy lifting right now, and that's important to understand because it means this is the phase where discipline matters most. Year 4 brings you to around $13,500. Still mostly your contributions, but now your investment returns are starting to become meaningful. They're probably generating $400 to $500 per year on their own. That might not sound like much, but it's real money that you didn't have to work for. But then something magical starts to happen around year 5 or 6. Your portfolio has grown to somewhere around $15,000 to $18,000, and now compound interest is really starting to flex its muscles. Each year, your investment returns are generating more money than your monthly contribution. Your money is starting to do more work than you are. This is the shift that changes everything. Most people get discouraged in years 1 through 3 because the return seems small. But if you make it past year 5, you're on your way to something really special. This is where the exponential growth really begins. Let me break down the math in a way that's going to make you excited about where this is heading. By year 10, if you've stayed consistent with that $100 monthly investment and you're earning an average of 8% annually, you're looking at around $25,000 to $30,000. Notice how that trajectory is accelerating? Year 1 to year 5, you went from 5,000 to 18,000. That's 13,000 in growth. But from year 5 to year 10, you went from 18,000 to 30,000. That's another 12,000. But look at the split. In that first 5-year stretch, most of that growth came from your contributions. In the second 5-year stretch, compound interest is doing more and more of the heavy lifting. And this is where people who understand wealth building get genuinely excited because they see what's coming next. From year 10 to year 15, you're not just adding another $100 a month. You might have gotten a raise. You might have found a way to invest $200 or $300 a month. But even if you stick with just the 100, your balance goes from 30,000 to roughly 50,000. And from year 15 to year 20, you're looking at jumping from 50,000 to 80,000 or more, depending on market performance and whether you've increased your contributions. Do you see what's happening here? The acceleration is getting steeper. But let's get to the real finish line. By year 25, if you've stayed consistent, if you've reinvested dividends, if you've maintained that monthly contribution habit, you're sitting on something close to $150,000 to $200,000. You've turned that initial $5,000 into what many people would consider a small fortune. And here's the crazy part. Most of that final $100,000 came from compound growth, not from your own effort. Think about what that means. You didn't have to work twice as hard. You didn't have to get lucky with individual stocks. You just had to understand that time is your greatest asset when it comes to building wealth. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. 25 years sounds like forever. That's a long time to wait. But here's the perspective that the wealthy have that most people don't. Those 25 years are going to pass whether you're building wealth or not. You're going to age 25 years regardless. The question isn't whether you have time. You definitely do. The question is whether you're going to use that time to build something meaningful or whether you're going to spend those 25 years wondering why you never got ahead financially. Let me address something else that people get wrong about this whole process. They think that to turn 5,000 into 100,000, they need to hit some magical 8% return consistently. But here's the truth. The stock market has returned closer to 10% annually over the long term. That's including all the recessions, crashes, wars, and disasters. Yes, your money will go down sometimes. Your portfolio will lose value during market downturns. But historically, every single time the market has recovered and gone on to new highs. The people who panic and sell during downturns are the ones who miss out on the recovery. The people who stay the course, who keep adding to their investments even when prices are falling, they're the ones who build real wealth. So if the market has actually returned closer to 10% and you're being conservative with an 8% assumption, what does that do to our timeline? It compresses it. You could potentially reach 100,000 even faster than the timeline I just gave you. The point is, you don't need to be a genius investor. You don't need to pick winning stocks. You just need to understand that the market, over long periods, goes up. And if you're consistently investing during good times and bad times, you're going to benefit from that upward trajectory. Let me talk about something else that separates the people who actually build wealth from the people who talk about building wealth. And that's the psychological component. When you start with $5,000 and you commit to adding $100 a month, something happens in your brain. You start thinking differently about money. You stop seeing your paycheck as something that just disappears into living expenses. You start seeing every $100 as a building block in something bigger. You become more aware of your spending. You notice opportunities to save that you never saw before. Maybe you realize you're spending $60 a month on subscription services you don't even use. You cancel those. Maybe you notice that your car insurance is way too expensive, so you shop around and save $30 a month. Maybe you're buying coffee every single day for $5, and you decide that brewing coffee at home and having that one special coffee a week instead costs you a quarter of what you were spending. These optimizations are small individually, but collectively they're powerful. And the cool part is that as your 5,000 grows and starts earning real money through investment returns, you feel excited about saving and investing. It's no longer a sacrifice. It becomes the most rewarding thing you do with your money. Here's something that most people don't think about when they're building wealth. The first 5,000 is genuinely brutal. It requires significant lifestyle changes. You have to say no to things. You have to be intentional about every dollar. But the second 5,000, it's noticeably easier because you've built the habits. By the time you're working toward the third or fourth 5,000, it feels almost automatic. You don't even have to think about it anymore. The hard work of building the discipline is already done. And this psychological shift is incredibly important because it means that reaching 100,000 isn't just about the math. It's about becoming the type of person who has 100,000. And that identity shift is what keeps people going when the market gets volatile or when they're tempted to give up. Let me talk about what actually changes in your life as this money grows. When you have 5,000 saved, you're no longer completely vulnerable to financial catastrophe. But you're close. A single emergency could wipe out a significant chunk of your savings. The stress of living that close to the edge is real, and most people who've been there know what I'm talking about. You're constantly anxious about what happens if something goes wrong. By the time you get to 20 or 30,000, life changes. You start sleeping better. You don't wake up at 3 in the morning panicking about money. You can handle emergencies without destroying your financial progress. Maybe your car needs repairs. You've got the money. Your furnace breaks down and needs replacing. Annoying, but not catastrophic. You lose your job. You've got several months of breathing room to find something better instead of desperately taking the first thing that comes along. There's something almost magical about having 30,000 in investments. It's like you've reached a threshold where money stops being something that terrifies you and starts being something that empowers you. You're not rich. You can't quit your job and travel the world. But you're safe. And safety changes how you make decisions about everything in your life. And as you push toward 50 or 60 or 80,000, something else happens. You start seeing opportunities instead of just threats. You meet someone who's starting a business and they're looking for investors. Suddenly, that's not just an interesting idea. That's something you can actually participate in. Your employer offers a professional development course that costs $2,000 and could boost your earning potential significantly. Before you had savings, that was impossible. Now it's an obvious investment in yourself. You spot an undervalued piece of real estate that needs work. Before, you could only scroll past it on Zillow and feel envious. Now you can actually crunch the numbers and see if it makes sense as an investment. Your best friend mentions they're starting a side business and they need someone to help them grow it. They're asking if you want to get involved. Before you had savings, that was a fun fantasy. Now it's something you can actually consider. This is what the wealthy understand that keeps them wealthy. Having money creates options, and options create wealth. Your first 5,000 creates a foundation. Your next 10,000 creates options. And once you have options, building toward 100,000 becomes inevitable. The trajectory you're on is only going up if you stay consistent. This is the law of compound growth. It's not a secret. It's not magical. It's just mathematics working in your favor. Let me address the concern that a lot of people have, which is about market crashes and volatility. Yes, the stock market will go down, sometimes dramatically. If you're investing for the next 25 years, you're probably going to experience multiple significant market downturns, maybe even a crash of 30 or 40 or 50%. And when that happens, your portfolio value is going to drop. Your 5,000 might temporarily become 4,500. Your 30,000 might become 20,000. It feels awful. The urge to panic sell is real. But here's the thing that separates successful investors from unsuccessful ones. When everyone else is panicking and selling, they're buying. They're adding their monthly $100 to their investments at the discount prices. They're essentially shopping for stocks on sale. Think about how you shop for groceries. If everything goes on sale, you don't stop buying groceries. You buy more because you're getting a better deal. The same principle applies to investing. When prices drop, you should be excited because your contributions are buying more shares at lower prices. When the market recovers, and it always has historically, those extra shares you picked up during the crash become incredibly valuable. This is how fortunes get built during market downturns. The people who stay the course, who keep investing, who don't panic, they're the ones who end up massively ahead. I know this is easier said than done. When your portfolio drops 20 or 30%, it's devastating. Every instinct tells you to get out and protect what you have left. But people who understand compound interest know that market crashes are actually opportunities, not disasters. This is when they buy at bargains. This is when they make money they wouldn't have made if the market just went straight up. Now let me talk about something really practical. The way you actually invest that initial 5,000 in your ongoing monthly contributions matters, but probably not in the way you think. Most people overthink their investment strategy. They spend weeks researching different funds, trying to pick the best possible option, analyzing expense ratios to the decimal point. And then they either get paralyzed and never actually invest, or they pick something and second-guess themselves constantly. Here's the truth that will blow your mind. For the vast majority of people, a simple index fund that tracks the total stock market is perfectly adequate. You're not trying to beat the market, you're trying to match the market. And boring index funds that match the market have created more millionaires than any other investment strategy in history. The S&P 500 has averaged over 10% annually for decades. The total stock market index is very similar. You can buy these funds through any major brokerage. You can set up automatic monthly investments. You can literally set it and forget it. And over time, you'll build serious wealth. The sophisticated traders who are trying to pick individual stocks, trying to time the market, trying to chase hot sectors, most of them underperform the simple index fund investors because they're doing too much. They're overcomplicating it. The boring strategy is the winning strategy. So you've got your $5,000 invested in a simple index fund. You've set up automatic monthly contributions of $100. Now you just wait. But here's where a lot of people mess up. They wait passively. They don't pay attention to anything. They don't think about whether they can increase their contributions. They don't notice opportunities to save more money. They just let it sit. The people who build wealth faster than the timeline I've given you do something different. They stay engaged with their financial progress. Maybe they set a goal to increase their monthly contribution from $100 to $150 when they get a raise at work. Maybe they find ways to reduce their expenses and suddenly they can invest $200 a month instead of $100. Let me tell you what I've observed about people who successfully navigate this journey. They don't just set it and forget it. They periodically check their progress. Not obsessively, not every single day, but maybe every few months, they look at their balance and they see it growing. And that growth is incredibly motivating. They start thinking about ways to accelerate the process. They might pick up a side gig specifically to generate additional investment capital. They might reduce their spending in certain categories to free up more money for investing. They're not depriving themselves of life. They're just being intentional about their priorities. And this brings me to something really important that separates people who build 100,000 from people who never do. It's about developing what I call investment consciousness. You become aware that every dollar has potential. That subscription you're not using could be canceled. That expensive coffee habit could become occasional. The key is that this consciousness isn't about deprivation. It's about awareness and intentionality. Most people's money flows like water downhill. You see something shiny, you buy it. You're hungry, you grab food. It's reactive. But when you develop investment consciousness, you become proactive. You notice you're spending $80 a month on streaming services and using 2 of them. You cancel the rest. You notice you're spending too much on takeout and meal prep instead. These aren't painful sacrifices. They're small adjustments that redirect money toward your real goal. Here's something else that changes as you build wealth. Your relationship with work changes. When you have $5,000 invested and it's growing, that's not a lot of passive income yet. But by the time you're at $50,000, your investments are generating maybe $400 a month in returns. That's real money. It's not replacing your job income. But it's meaningful. It's like having a part-time job that works while you sleep. And psychologically, that feels incredible. You're not just earning money through your job. You're building income streams that are independent of how many hours you work. As you push toward 100,000, you might be earning 800 a month or more in investment returns depending on market performance. That's like a second job, except you don't have to go to work, you don't have to deal with a boss, you don't have to deal with office politics. The money just shows up because you've built a machine that generates wealth. And that changes how you think about your job. You're no longer desperate for every paycheck. You have options. You can negotiate better salaries because you're not operating from fear. You can leave bad situations because you have a financial cushion. You can take calculated risks that broke people simply can't afford to take. And this is where I want to circle back to something I said earlier. The first $5,000 is the hardest milestone you're going to hit in this entire journey. It requires discipline and sacrifice and delayed gratification at levels that most people are not willing to maintain. But the vast majority of people who successfully build 100,000 don't earn dramatically more money than the people who build nothing. They just had a system. They stayed consistent. They understood the power of time and compound growth. And they didn't give up. Think about it this way. If you're going to spend the next 25 years working, you're going to spend them regardless. The question is whether you're also going to be building wealth during those 25 years. or whether you're going to look back in 25 years wondering what could have happened if you just started. The person who turns 5,000 into 100,000 by investing in a boring index fund and adding 100 a month is doing something that millions of people could do but don't. It's not a secret. It's not complicated. It's available to anyone with a job and the discipline to follow through. And here's the final perspective I want to leave you with. Turning 5,000 into 100,000 isn't about getting rich. It's about financial stability. It's about building a foundation so sturdy that normal life events don't destroy your progress. It's about developing the skills and habits that create wealth. It's about becoming the type of person who builds something meaningful over time instead of hoping things work out. Once you hit 100,000, the path to 200,000 is much clearer. And from there, $1 million is actually within reach. But none of that happens if you don't start. None of that happens if you don't take that 5,000 and commit to building something bigger. So here's what's going to happen next. You're either going to close this video and go back to life as usual, wondering why you never seem to get ahead financially, or you're going to take action. Maybe you don't have 5,000 right now. Start with 1,000. Start with 500. Start with whatever you can. The amount doesn't matter as much as starting, because once you start, once you build the habit, once you see that your money can grow on its own, you're going to understand something that most people spend their entire lives missing. And that understanding is going to change everything. The person you become while building from 5,000 to 100,000 is infinitely more valuable than the 100,000 itself. So take that first step. Open an investment account. Make that first contribution. Prove to yourself that you're capable of building real wealth, because you absolutely are.